Sanibonani bafundi and namkelekile to another exciting life sciences lesson. Now you've learned over the last few lessons that populations interact with each other in a community when they feed and when they compete for natural resources. You've also learned that populations can change over time. A community of different populations does not spring into existence in a complete form. Rather, it develops gradually through a series of stages, each dominated by different populations of organisms. Although communities appear to be balanced and stable within an ecosystem because they are made up of populations that change, communities will also change over time. Even when the climate of an area stays stable year after year, ecosystems have a tendency to change from simple to complex. This process of community development over time, which involves populations in one stage being replaced gradually by different populations, is called succession. Now in English, the word succession means to follow in a particular order. It implies a series or sequence of events or things. A king will be succeeded by his son, the prince. We call this a form of succession. In maths, a series of numbers is said to follow on in succession if they are arranged in a particular order or pattern. In the environment, ecological succession also refers to a sequence. Populations and communities change over time in a particular sequence that can very often be predicted. Two forms of ecological succession can be identified. They're called primary and secondary succession. We will look at each of these processes in turn. Now this diagram will help you understand the sequence of events that makes up primary ecological succession. Now you can see that each part of the diagram is numbered in order. Succession takes place in the sequence illustrated by the numbers in the diagram. Now let's discuss each part of this process called primary succession. Primary succession begins on bare, lifeless substrate, such as rocks or in open water, where no soil that can support plant life exists and no organisms at all grow or live in that area. Now, due to primary succession, organisms gradually move into the area and begin to change its characteristics. Let's focus on the stage marked 1 in our diagram. This is the first stage of primary succession. Primary succession begins in lakes left behind after the retreat of glaciers or on volcanic islands that emerge out of the sea as bare rock or on bare land exposed by a retreating glacier. Now you can see from these photos that the exposed rock left behind after the glacier retreats and the volcanic island are barren and have no living organisms inhabiting the area. Lichens begin to grow on this barren rock and exposed bare ground. Lichens are called pioneer organisms as they are the first organisms to colonize bare area. Acidic secretions from the lichens help to break down the rocky substrate, and slowly bits of soil begin to accumulate in the indentations in the rock. Mosses then begin to grow in these pockets of soil, enriching the quality and quantity of the soil and allowing other plants to take root. Primary succession can also take place in human man-made built environment. Now you have probably seen how mosses and then weeds take hold in paving. Sand dunes are also considered bare, sterile environments until pioneer plants colonize them. Let's look at this diagram again and see that we can move now from stage 1 to stage 2 and stage 3. Over the next few years, grasses and small herbaceous trees and plants take hold in the small pockets of the soil. As time passes, the soil is enriched and so larger plants can begin to take root. Grasslands begin to emerge as new communities in areas that were once covered by only pioneer organisms. Shrubs and even small trees will begin to grow in the area, bringing the animal populations that depend on them for food and shelter. Now, what is important to realize is that succession does not only apply to plant communities. Any animals that rely on plants in the pioneer and subsequent communities for food will also move into the area because the animal populations depend on plant populations that are rooted in the soil. Now, after the break, we'll see what happens next in this process.